to this session, which is on short-term economic modeling. In some sense, one has to really be concerned about what's short-term, what's medium-term, what does it mean by this. I think there are 2-3 different types of problems that integration of renewables pose. If you are looking at a long-term policy perspective, how much renewable should I have in the system? What kind of balance, what kind of load, what is an optimum strategy? Then you want to have a fairly long-term model, and that you want to really understand what are the costs, investment and operating cost of different kinds of systems to meet the requirement. But this kind of purely technical model has to be really integrated with an understanding of the economic modeling as well, because any technical solution that you select, say would also have an impact on the economy, because different technologies mix would require different investment, different kind of fuels and so on, and that would really have an investment available for other sectors of the economy would be affected. And so one needs to really integrate what will be the consequence of a particular technical solution on the economy, on its growth rate, on the mix, the structure of the economy, and also on consumption and demand for energy itself, for electricity itself. So that unless you have an integrated system, you may be misguided about it. I think at our institute, IRADE, Integrated Research and Action for Development, we look at this in an integrated way. We have a set of 2 different models: an economic model which has all the technical choices are there, but it looks at a 35, 40, 50-year perspective, simultaneously optimizing how to meet the power system consistent with an economic growth and demand. But then we also recognize that this model looks at annual demand balance. So we need to have a more detailed hourly demand matching system, which we also have another model. And then we iterate between the 2 to get an understanding of how we get a solution which is consistent from a long-term point of view, and it's consistent with the economic development, the implicit resources requirement of various kinds. And I think particularly this is important when you're talking about solar and wind, renewables by and large, which are not available on demand. And that today, I mean, in India, one hears all the time that there is solar has reached grid parity. But it is not counting the cost of really operating the grid, what other investments you need in the grid system, how to make it smart and be able to absorb the solar or renewable power has to be factored in. And unless you look at the whole thing together, you might get a wrong idea of what is doing. On the other hand, if you look at the short term, you have the question of if you have 5 years perspective, then you say, okay, I'm going to need so much of power and much is fairly easily predictable as to what it is. My economy is likely to grow at such and such a rate, and I would need so much of this. But even here, the complexity becomes clear if you really think about the fact that a few months ago, the Minister of Power said we will need 1 billion ton of coal. Few weeks later, he said, no, we don't need any more coal power plants. We need to push some other things. So I think even having a clearer understanding of the short-term, medium term is also critical. And of course, I have seen that in this conference, there is a lot of emphasis on day-to-day or hour-to-hour grid management, a very short-term understanding of how things work. And here also, bringing in the economic aspects of this becomes very critical, because the way you operate does really indeed the cost of it. So the cost of generation and the cost of transmission has to be integrated to see that the demand dispersed over the system can be met at minimum cost, at the same time at maximum reliability and so on. So I think this is basically my understanding of what this thing is about, but we will listen to various speakers and see what they have to say. I think on my list, the first one is cost and valuation of wind and solar in India's electric system. I don't know who is going to present this. R. Deshmukh? No. Okay. So Mr. Deshmukh will present. I don't have your speaker profile, so is there some? They're all in the booklet. Okay. Please look it up in the booklet.
Good.
Mr. Deshmukh is from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, USA. Please.